Well, thank you so much for joining us for your reporter behind the story. I'm Brian Flores. Right now, we're taking a look at a medical procedure and a young Colorado girl who's in rare company. She had to undergo a liver and heart transplant all at once. Your reporter in northern Colorado, Dylan Thomas, has her story.
For months and months, this hospital room was home for 11-year-old Gracie Greenlaw.
I was born with HLHS, where like one part of my heart works, but like the other part doesn't really work.
She had multiple open heart surgeries in her young life, and that led her to liver failure.
At first, it's overwhelming, and you just, try and stay positive for your kid.
Gracie's care team at Children's Hospital Colorado knew she needed more than just a new heart.
She would not survive if she were to only get a heart transplant.
She was placed on the donor waiting list for a heart and liver. But after less than a month on the waiting list, they got a call. A perfect match had been found.
You get the phone call and a range of emotions, nervous, scared. I think you're excited.
And I was like, well, this is happening.
Gracie courageously went into surgery, which took many hours.
We have been preparing for this.
Dr. Danya Brigham was one of more than 100 Children's Hospital staff members who helped care for Gracie.
This was our first ever combined heart-liver transplant that we performed here at Children's Hospital Colorado.
While her heart was transplanted, a machine kept blood processing through her new liver, which was transplanted soon after. But the rare double transplant was a great success.
She's one of 37 patients who's ever needed a combined heart-liver transplant ever.
Wow.
In pediatrics. So it's very rare.
Gracie's family and care team are forever grateful to the donor's family.
She would not have survived without this gift.
The ultimate sacrifice, obviously very grateful for the family that chose to give up their kids as organs for her.
But in their hardest moments, they made the decision to help other people. And we're so grateful that they helped us.
Now, with a new lease on life, Gracie is free to go home to Fort Collins.
I go roller skating, I play dodgeball, and like after school I do sleepovers and stuff. So it's just like being a normal kid now.
Gracie has a word of advice to other families in similar situations.
Keep going and don't ever give up.
Wow, that is amazing. Joining me right now from Fort Collins is Dylan Thomas. Dylan, this is just an amazing story of survival. How rare is it that a young patient had to undergo 2 organ transplants at once?
You know, in the history of pediatric care here in the United States of America, Gracie is only the 37th child to have to undergo a double liver and heart transplant, just kind of underscoring how serious of a procedure this really is. Not only did they have to wait for a donor, but they needed to wait for a donor who could provide both a liver and a heart, and one that was within the region so that Gracie could have access to that. She was in the hospital for nearly 6 months waiting for the next sign as to what they were going to have to do. And then within less than a month of getting on that waiting list, she was able to get that donor, luckily. But once again, talking about how rare this is, one of only 37 at the time, now 39 since her procedure was completed, to ever have this done in a pediatric setting. And those at the hospital had been preparing for quite some time for this possibility. They never knew when they would need to do the surgery, but they knew that the day would come eventually. So Gracie just happened to be at the right hospital who had been preparing for this procedure.
Yeah, I can't imagine. There was a lot of emotion in this story, especially coming from the parents, Dylan. How would you describe Gracie's parents when you interviewed them?
You know, they were so kind to welcome us into their home with our cameras. And, everybody was really kind. She also has a little sister that you might have saw sitting beside her. Everybody, you would have thought it was just a normal family who had gone through a normal life for the last, 11, 12 years. But then when we sat down and actually started talking about what it's been like to have Gracie have these heart issues ever since she was a little kid, and then to see her to get to this point where she can now have a new heart and a new liver, that's when the emotions really started to hit them. You saw the dad trying to keep himself composed, but the mom, as you saw in the story there, started to get rather emotional. I think one of the more touching parts of the entire interview, and we put it on air as you just saw, was when her mom was talking about the donor, and she had to pause there for a second and compose herself. And if you look off to the right of the screen, her daughter kind of makes a little smirk and she goes, and you kind of hear that moment. And you could tell even the daughter was kind of registering like, yeah, this is an emotional moment and look at where we are today. So they definitely were emotional, but you can understand when your child had been born with a a non-functioning heart completely, and to get all the way to 11 years later where now she has a healthy heart.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, you have one family that's sacrificing whatever happened to their child to give life-saving organs to another child. I mean, the parents must be going through a roller coaster of emotions. Dylan, what about the doctors? I mean, would you say there was, a sense of excitement for getting them to perform this procedure? I mean, it's so rare for them to do that.
Yeah, definitely. You could tell excitement is one way to put it for sure, because as I had mentioned a few seconds ago, they had been preparing for this for years, knowing that one day they may have to do a surgery just like this, and then for that to kind of fall into their lap. And now, especially looking in retrospect, knowing it went so successfully, they were very excited for this. More than 100 different medical providers were involved in this entire care procedure. And then when it came down to the actual surgery, they had to kind of double up. They wanted to make sure there were 2 heart surgeons, 2 liver surgeons. There was 2 of everything, just in case, to make sure everything was going well. And one thing that we briefly touched on in that story that we didn't really get to go much more into depth on is the machine that was keeping the liver alive while the procedure was happening on the heart. The heart transplant takes several hours. And so off to the side, the doctor was telling me she couldn't, the liver doctor was telling me while she was waiting for the heart to be done, she couldn't help but to watch this machine, and that there was a living liver there that was being kept alive by a brand new style machine, and that it was not only functioning blood, but it was also functioning and using other types of procedures in order to keep life going through it. So they were talking about how this is a lot of different types of exciting times in medicine that they're able to watch and complete right there with Gracie's case.
Yeah, simply amazing what these doctors did. It must be a relief for Gracie as well, Dylan, and her family, to be out of the hospital, getting a chance to really enjoy life. What is the prognosis for Gracie at this point? Does she have to get checked regularly? I would imagine she would, right?
Yeah, she actually told me one of her favorite parts of not being at the hospital is not having to eat all the hospital food. She gets the normal food at home now. So she's excited to be home, being able to, as you heard her say, play dodgeball with friends. She's keeping up friends. She's living a normal life right now, other than the fact that she has to do fairly regular doctor check-ins. Some of them are on Zoom, some of them are in person, but she's talked about how it's really nice to just be back home now. And her little sister mentioned that she loves that she doesn't have to stay at grandma's house all the time now. So I think the whole family's excited to be back together. As for the future with the care, though, Gracie's family did tell us that eventually she will need another new heart. So they're hoping that she will live a long, successful life, but they do know, and Gracie's aware as well, that eventually, years down the road, she will need another heart transplant. But for now, she's not focused on that. She's definitely excited to be back with her friends. You can imagine after 6 months of talking to your friends on a screen, she's just loving being back with them in class.
Oh, just the possibility for her to live this life with her family and her friends, as you've been talking about, that's just priceless. Dylan, thank you so much. And remember, Dylan Thomas is your reporter in Northern Colorado. You can send him your news tip through cbscolorado.com, call 863-TIPS, or email him at yourreporter@cbs.com.